This session will be moderated by Abhishek Sengupta, who's the head of multimedia at Khalij Times. And we'd like to welcome all the speakers and moderator, and we look forward to a strategic session.
Thank you, Yasmin. Good to be back on the stage once again. Of course, we're still talking digital payments, but this time it's interesting. We're actually looking ahead and how to future-proof your strategies as far as digital payments is concerned. But before I get to that, just a little anecdote this morning. I was driving, of course, on Sheikh Zayed Road and listening to the radio, and someone was asking a company that's just raised some $1 million, and the company said, the representative of the company said, customer is at the heart of everything we do. And the presenter laughed and said, which company would say that customer is not at the heart of your core business? And I think that is a reality for everyone. Let's begin with Kavi, because Kavi is straight in front of me in the firing line. Kavi, customers, of course, at the heart of your operations, and I don't have to reiterate that, but how do you analyze customer behavior to sort of future-proof your strategies? How much of an insight do you actually get and make use of those insights?
So firstly, thanks everyone for being here. It's nice to be physically present and not have my two daughters ambush me at any given opportunity. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Welcome everyone. Data is everything today. Sama said in the last presentation, data is oil. It's the new form of gold, and it allows us to drive new insights. At ISG, we see a lot of different types of transactions that come across our platform, and there's about 14 billion of them a year. How to take that information and structurally put it into a position where you can start to do more actionable insights and take greater activity and greater support for your customer base becomes important. So whether we're supporting merchants, acquirers, issuing banks, or fintechs, it's then looking at those specific items and saying, right, if we're looking at an issuer, what are they doing in their market that we can take those insights and push it back to them? Similarly, from a fintech's perspective, what are the types of messaging that they want to be able to push across, and how do we do things like that?
Right. Okay. Interesting. Francois, you're the Director of Payments, Loyalty and Data at Alshaya Group, very much a Dubai company, and you've been here for a while. You don't have to really give me stats and figures or anything, but tell us largely over the last 15 months or so that the world's drastically changed. What have you seen in terms of customer behavior?
The world has changed.
Yeah.
You are correct with that. First of all, the change, it was in the companies. We, as a retailer, had to face this change, as to ensure that we were meeting the customers where they were. And where were they, those customers, during those past 18 months? Not in the stores, not in the shopping malls. So first of all, what we have seen is a significant pivot, what we call from brick to click. And retailers like Alshaya, we had to meet those expectations, we had to meet those new customer behaviors. Alongside this change in the way customers are trading with retailers like us, there is also the way they pay. We heard it before, WhatsApp, for instance, where we had to implement ways of engaging with the customers, and it led, for instance, in some countries like KSA, with cash on delivery, something we were not doing before. It's not really the topic of today, because cash is a declining payment methodology, but in terms of new payment methodology, we also heard it this morning, buy now, pay later. It's literally the payment, the way of payment, which is changing the way customers are paying today. It's taking the region by storms. We are seeing a massive adoption of this type of payment from our customers. We also heard it before, but for instance, new payment methodologies such as pay and go. Customers are really keen to pay online, buy in store, or pay in store and pay online. This is really changing the way we as a retailer, we have to operate. So from this change of trading with our customers, from this change of paying for our goods in our different stores or online estates. What does it mean in terms of payment terms? So we are accepting different payment types, and this generates more data. So what do we do with this data? That's really the key question. And there is this good old saying, data rich, insight poor. We heard the comment, actionable insight. This is really the objective. The objective is not at all to collect as much data as possible. The organization, the technology, the processes in place in many retailers are sometimes not able to handle so much data. So prioritize the data, ensure the data is stored in an environment that allows you to consume this data, put in place team, processes, technologies that are able to allow the organization to consume this data. And then there is a question, what you're going to do with this data? Provide insight to the organization in order to do what? Two things. Generate insight to understand better the customer and therefore improve the customer experience. And alongside the improvement of the customer experience, the generation of growth.
Right. So that was fairly detailed. You said, Francois, you said you were not ready. You're still warming up, but I think you already warmed up to this discussion. And I should have said bonjour at the start, but never better late than never. Yeah, we'll come to that. All right, let me bring at this point in time Ali Imran, who's the head of transaction banking and digital services at Commercial Bank of Dubai. But I'm told he is, if stuck was a good word, I would take it, stuck in the US right now. All right. Ali Imran, you're joining us all the way from US at this point in time. Thank you for joining us. And we did hear Kavi and Francois mention how customer data drives business growth. Do you want to give us a quick lowdown on how you are using customer data to sort of drive your business forward?
Thank you. I think stuck is probably not the best word. It's a trip by choice, not by design. Effectively, in financial services, historically, the focus has always been on who part of the data rather than, on the what and how the activity is done. I think in the last 12 months or so, as the pandemic has accelerated a lot of transformation across various industries, I think in financial services in particular, our focus has shifted also. It's very important for us to know our clients and the who part as well. But I think it has clearly transitioned towards the what do they do actually while they interact with us or with our various partners. So having usage of the data across all the touch points in the customer journey has been a transformation on our part. Second point, probably we have moved away from a departure from a classic segmentation-based analytics to now really moving towards a hyper-personalization and think of individuals. And I think the third is clearly everybody has leveled up the high standard of personalization and data sort of monetization across all sectors, and financial services has no sort of been difference. In summary, probably we are as a financial services a little bit of a catch-up mode as well. I think the standards are set today in the market by that of Netflix and Amazons of the world, who already have very high level of consumer behavior data personalization as well as recommendation engines, which has been quite advanced. But now financial services as an industry and we as a bank is also moving into the same direction.
Right. So you did mention the Amazons and Netflix. They're obviously these are names that keep coming up in several conversations that center around knowing the who, as you said, Ali. Kavi, if I can ask you to sort of give us maybe, I don't know, you may or may not have a specific example where you used customer data and you actually sort of implemented something just to make the customer experience a whole lot better.
So perfect timing for a perfect question. We're actually in the process of doing this for one of our customers in India. They're a large public sector bank, and they are launching a new product, and they've given us a huge amount of data to work through. And as has been discussed, it's not what or how much data you have, but what you do with it and how you siphon it and what intelligent level you put to it to make assumptions and assertions. So we've been working with some market-leading partners to do that. And we're now in that process of pushing it through. So what we should be able to see is a huge incline or uplift in credit card adoption and also credit card usage. It's great for banks to issue lines of credit, but if that line of credit is not being utilized, it actually becomes a cost to the bank. So understanding how to warm the customer up to use those lines effectively and efficiently, and then who you're talking to as well. So when you're segmenting your customer out based on the data sets that you have, how you're getting the best message to the right person at the right time to ensure they're able to receive that message and do something proactive with it.
Right. Francois, anything that you might want to talk to us about? Any new sort of initiative that you've implemented based on what you've seen from customer trends, customer behavior?
It's not really something new, but something that I believe each and any retailer is trying to achieve, which is to bring the different data sets together to create a single customer view. A golden record, a customer DNA, it has many names, with an objective to enhance the customer experience. So the beauty of payment data is the depth and the width of the payment data set, with most of the transaction being processed with digital payments, with the granularity of the data collected with those payments, with the acceleration of even more data collected because of new payment methodology, because of the pivot from brick to click, as I just mentioned, we are able to gather even more data from payment. Payment data on its own is not enough. Single customer view, customer DNA, all those terms, they really come to life and benefit the organization and therefore the user experience when you bring those data sets alongside other data sets, such as loyalty. You might have noticed my title, my job title is Director of Loyalty, Payments, Data and Insight. And it's really this ambition to bring all the size that comes with payment data alongside the granularity and also the PII data that you can get from loyalty data, mixing this, merging this with browsing data, and this is what really gives us our customer DNA. So what do we do with that? Because once again, data rich, insight poor, that's really the motto that we are following at Alshaya, which is about ensuring that for any data that we bring, we are able to create value out of it. So how do we create value out of this payment data that we bring into our single customer view? The personalization. Personalization of what? The user experience. Online, obviously, that's the easiest. Personalizing the website, personalizing the communication, personalizing the product. My key objective one day may be personalization of the price, ensuring price personalization at every touch point on our online estate. And then in retail, in store, significantly much more difficult, but once again, digitalization of payments come also with digitalization of the customer experience in store. So we can think about the screen, obviously the POS system, scan and go is a way to use payment as a way to engage with the customer and personalize. So as you can see, all of these starting with payment data, storing this data, enhancing this data with other data sets, creating the insight that we will use to improve the user experience, which in turn will create growth for the organization.
Right. I think the key word there that I really want to explore a bit more is personalization. Let's bring in Ali back to the conversation at this stage. Ali, we spoke to Citibank earlier this morning at another panel. Yours is more local bank. The commercial bank of Dubai is intrinsic to Dubai, to the UAE. How much of you've just said that, you know, you're trying to identify the who. Now, how is personalization also something that plays in your mind when you're looking at data? And if so, have you done it?
Absolutely, and that's something which we have been quite extensively working on, actually, and it's quite evident in our propositions in the last 6 to 9 months as well. As I mentioned earlier, we have moved away from essentially a segment-based approach to a real individual cohorts focused approach in our analytics, as well as our, we are able to even price our clients accordingly as well, since in banking it is a little bit different, as we have to risk price our clients. I think that has always been historically the case. I think in terms of where the evolution we have been able to move through is really focused on the journey analytics part and providing more and more partnerships with our other clients and corporates like Alshaya and others to work into an embedded payment methodology in which it becomes as frictionless as possible, because we as a bank typically sit on the last mile of the payment as well, and the clients are looking for more and more embedded options in which it's as frictionless as possible. It should be a one click, as Francois also mentioned, having an options of BNPLs and other alternate methodologies as well, which allows essentially clients to be able to leverage their spending power, is something. And we've been working quite closely with a number of fintechs in the market. And rather than trying to build ourselves, we believe in a true partnership ecosystem, which we are building along with a number of fintechs. And we sit essentially at the last mile of the transaction. And we would like typically to partner on the first mile with various specialized fintechs in this regard.
Right, Ali. So I did understand from a banking perspective. Let's bring in Kavi at this point in time. We're talking about future-proofing your strategies based on what you on the insights you derive from customer. Do you want to list out one trend that you think is going to take over, is going to be your sole focus going forward rest of the year?
So I think when you're talking about re-strategizing on how you address your customer base, it's first trying to understand why you need to re-strategize. The impacts of globalization, where you've now got global merchants supplying global customers who've got a global experience. The entire infrastructure and climate changes around that. So you've got to be able to meet their expectation as a continual piece. So customer expectation is now changing. You also see there's an ongoing issue with pricing. It's not getting cheaper anywhere. People are expecting things to drop. Cost to deliver is more expensive. So when you start to fuse all of those things together, you now need to figure out, how do I reapply what I know to ensure that I can get the best consumer experience possible. For us, we look at it more from a four-prong approach, which is about having contextualized messaging and engaging your customer. And as you started the session today, it is all about the customer. Now, whether that be a bank, whether it be a merchant, whether it be an acquirer, it's how do you engage that party to have contextualized messaging where what is being said to them actually resonates. Attracting someone to your site now is 80% of the battle. There are so many competing forces out there. When you look at the likes of Apple, Google, Amazon, these guys are all big tech houses now. They're no longer, the retailers trying to sell you a computer or an aggregator of product. They are pushing their technology at you hard. And the way they're monetizing that is through the sale of retail goods. So when you're able to understand the influence that they're now pushing onto the consumer, how that consumer now visualizes our environment as the providers of payment structures, the providers of wallets, of movement of funds, they expect a lot more of us. And they expect it faster, more transparently, and at cheaper prices. So when we start to engage the customer, contextualize messaging. Once the customer's on site, it's now empowering them to become more self-sufficient. So how can you be the first person to offer them something more than just the payment? So once you get them empowered, they're now more likely to stay with you. And it's what you see within the super apps. I think all the panelists before us have talked around super apps. Once someone's in your ecosystem, they understand they're being spoken to in a language that they understand. You've got data-driven insights that are now pushing messaging to them at the right time, in the right form, with the right type of language. These people and these consumers are a lot more happy to engage and spend with you. Once you've done that, you're now able to optimize your entire piece. And here's where the shameless plug will come in. But at ISG, this is what we've spent the last 18 months, 2 years building, which is that platform to support full optimization, both on the front end, whether it be with cloud-based terminals, whether it be smart routing on the middle end, so you can take transactions and push them to any channel partner. These are things that the customers don't see, but what helps drive that experience on the back end. And then obviously from the back end side, how do you manage clear settlement, reconciliation? How can you ensure transaction assurance that transactions aren't getting lost in the multiple systems that they now flow through? Ali talks around empowering fintechs and disruptors to support the front end. We've seen it very clearly in Europe with PSD2. The API structure that are now built out for banks to drive that is very clear. Banks should become banks. In the first session, the gentleman from Citibank said, banks are here to be trusted. That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
Let the technology players, let the disruptors come out and do what they're great with and drive that capability inwards. So you're able to now engage, you're able to empower, and now optimize your structures. This now allows you to transform. And when you transform, you're unable to unlock new revenue opportunities via data, via cross-collaboration with other partners. I think Samar said it in the last session as well. It's about cross-collaborating and cross-pollinating between different vendors and suppliers and technology experts to deliver that much more.
Absolutely. It's about, it is the day and age of collaboration, and of course, all working towards managing customer expectations. I think that's one big word we keep talking about, and also engaging. Francois, very quickly, we just about under 10 minutes to go. I think if you can wrap up in your own words, how do you manage customer expectations? First, before even answering that, would you tell me if the customer expectations have changed over the last few months, over the last 18 months? And how do you manage that?
Simplicity, I think, is one of the key customer expectation. And when you bring this to payment, which is a topic of today, it translates into the simple sentence, pay the way I want. Okay? Too many times, retailers are not offering the payment that customers are keen to use. Too many times, payment is part of broken journeys. So meeting customer expectations when it comes to payment, it's about ensuring that the customer is able to pay the way he wants. So how do you do this? First of all, we heard the word fintech. Fintech is probably the industry which is the most disruptive, innovative in the world. The UAE is at the center of this disruption. As a retailer, as a company, how do you integrate in your ecosystem? How do you integrate into your payment ecosystem those fintech, those companies who are able to simplify the experience, facilitate the experience, and meet the customer wants and needs? Okay, so as an organization, it's really important for a retailer, for an organization, to be able to be flexible enough, agile enough, disruptive enough to implement the services and the product of those fintech in your organization. Then meeting the customer expectation, it's also a common sense. It's as simple as this. So common sense, how does it translate? All along the funnel, the conversion funnel, remove all the problems, all the blockers, all the issues that your insights, that you collected from your data, that you collected from the payment transactions. Use all of this in order to simplify the user experience, to ensure that from the moment the customer lands on your estate through the checkout, everything is being done to facilitate the UX, the UI, the customer experience. So that's it, basically. It's as simple as this. It's about ensuring that as a retailer, you meet customer expectations by simplifying your approach to payment and simplifying your user experience.
Right. So it's not just meeting the customer expectations, but also engaging them. Like you said, a lot of work is being done behind the scenes and collaboration, cross collaboration between fintechs. Let's bring in Ali maybe for one final time this morning, just to give us an insight that how at the end of the day you are delivering much more than just a payment service, which Kavi mentioned. It's about giving a bit more than what the customer thinks he's getting. How do you integrate everything to deliver that extra bit?
Thanks for that. Essentially, I think our mantra as an institution, my personal, has been something what I call a 1+3. So first and foremost, as a bank, we are focused and really on the transparency part to our clients. As we sit at the right last mile, we really want to make sure that we guarantee the amount of refunds once a refund has been requested. A right to cancel a transaction up to an X minutes are allowed after a submission if somebody has changed his mind. And allowing all these value-added features as part of the transaction simplicity and execution is something which is a continuously evolving. These are some of the features but I mentioned, but I think at the heart of it is really the transparency part that in the operating model, and it's up to us. Again, it's a wide definition of transparency, which we can define, but essentially empowering our clients to ease of payment. Then I said 1+3, the three underlying, I would say, trends or areas which continues to dominate and evolve these things will continue to be, I think, the fast and the actionable data. Was someone mentioned before as well, machine learning continues to change and challenge the landscape. And I think one of the other area which will remain to be a very hot issue will be the privacy in the coming days as well. As we continue to contemplate more and more with the customer data, I think privacy, data privacy is a very important part to that as well.
Indeed, we did speak about data privacy earlier this morning. Ali, Imran, thank you for your time this morning. Very quickly, Kavi, Choitram, one final closing remark, and then one final remark from Francois as well, if you want to wrap your conversation this morning.
So look, I think data, consumer engagement, and supporting the globalized market is everything now. And it's how can you create a single experience for a global brand. And when you've got global regulation coming into play, you've got local regulation coming into play, how do you navigate those challenges and the nuances to ensure that the experience that you're able to offer your consumers is consistent? And so looking at platforms that are now able to transcend those boundaries, that are able to address local compliances and regulation, understand the complexities of data, whether it has to reside sovereignly on soil or it can sit in the cloud, and how to use the new technology that we have access to really optimize all of that together becomes your winning silver bullet.
And make it future-proof. That pretty much is the recipe. Francois, one final word before we call it a day as far as this particular panel is concerned.
Having a payment strategy, having a data strategy are the two must for us organization. You are talking here about probably the two most important areas for a modern retailer, the two most disruptive area for a modern retailer. So from Alshaya's perspective, but probably for many other retailers, this is really the two areas where we are going to focus on in the coming period, because this is where we see the biggest changes, but also the biggest impact.
Right. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. And thank you, Kavi, for your time. Thank you, Ali, as well, all the way from US. And over to Yasmin now, I think, for the most important bit of this first session. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for patiently hearing us this morning.